once you actually build your objects, you can also add additional insights, right? Commentary directly to the data fields, right? So we want to prevent this, so we turn this off, and we actually generate our own calendar table.
This is really this is the place where you actually make a difference for the end users. If you build a strong foundation, then this is now the place and time where it's not just for you, it's also for the end user, and this is how you will benefit him as well.
So we'll go over two most common scenarios that we encounter. So one is, of course, starting from a consolidated table, right, where you have all your data. And then, as I said, you're eager to start in Power BI. You jump into Power BI and you try to bring this data to life now, right? So what you do, right, immediately you have all this interactive icons and so on, and just to familiarize yourselves with the report, right? Typically you will just see a blank canvas, right? And then you have several views here that you can switch between, like report view, table view, model view, and so on. But how do we actually get this data now in Power BI, right? So the first step would be just to get data. And in this case, where we have an Excel workbook, we can just connect it from there, right? So we simply select it here, we open it, and this will basically give us the right connection. We see the preview here, we select our source data, and when we select the table, right, we then either load it directly or transform it. Now, my personal recommendation is that you should always just do the first cleaning and prepping, right? So the first step we said is clean and transform your data, right? So you'll click this, right? And in that case, you will actually get to this view, right? So in your case, you would just see this one table now, then import it into your report, and then it will basically look something like this, right? So we do have our data, we have some time periods on which we have this. So we have the year and month columns. We do have some dimension or attributes by which we want to, of course, look at this data, right? So profit center hierarchy, so level 1, level 2, region, and then our metrics, right? These are the important columns, right? We have metrics for sales, cost, gross profit, sales previous year, cost previous year, and gross profit previous year. Now that's great, right? Then we could just start visualizing this directly in Power BI, right? So instead of doing any sort of data preparation, people just import this data, have this table, and then they start dropping the data and so on. Now, why this is maybe not the best case, of course you can do this, right? To just familiarize yourself with the tools. And here we see there's a lot of visualization options and stuff that you can use them straight away. But it's better to just clean your data first, because it makes all the rest of the steps and the maintenance, building additional objects and so on later on so much easier. So what do we want to do, right? So the first thing is we want to first have a clean data table, right? And then reference it and organize it into a proper star schema data model. Now, what is a star schema data model, right? This is important, but it's not hard, right? So if we go into the model view, this is what we want to achieve, right? We want to achieve our main table, which is a fact, right? So that it has all our metrics, our transactional data, and everything. And then we want to basically add dimension tables around it, by which we will filter the data. And it is important for us to do so because, as I said, it will ensure that your Power BI is optimized, right? That you have the right objects, that everything is working nice and smoothly, that you can, that especially because of performance as well, right? So this is one of the most important things, right? If you do the data modeling well, you will inevitably have good performance from the get-go, and then be able to really scale the reports and then work on top of it, right? But if you skip these steps, you can quickly fall into some traps. So this is what we want to achieve. Now, if we go back to our Power Query view, right? How do we actually do this from this one table? So the best way to do this is to actually reference this main table that's already kind of cleaned up, right? Just the base data, and then work from there on, right? So we want to get to a view that's really efficient, that works fast, and that we can then build our dimensions around this, right? So the first step is, of course, this. We reference this table, so we start like this. Now, there are several things that really ensure that we can work with the model later on. And one of the things is that we should probably do some transformations, right? And one of the things here is we have year and months columns as separate values here. But in order for Power BI to leverage some time intelligence functions and so on, it's always better to create a separate calendar table. Now, for this, we need a date column. And since we don't have it yet here, we can actually create it out of these two columns. So it's good to actually have aggregated data. That's better than to have it on a daily and a monthly level for this kind of reporting, right? But we still want to have this date column to work with, right? So we can actually select these two columns and transform them or merge them into a year-month column, and out of that column we can generate a date. Okay, so basically we can just select these two columns by holding down Control or Shift and then right-click and merge columns, right? So as I already did this step, this will actually add a new step, but basically we can add a separator, right? So we'll just do a custom separator like this, and this will actually transform into a new, you can rename it however you want, so maybe year, month, right? And this will now then transform it into a year-month column. If you click OK, you will get to this part, right? So you basically join the two columns into one, and this gives us now a great way to allow Power BI to build a date column out of this exact column. And because we can leverage some of the cool stuff that Power BI does, we can actually add a new column based on this. So we can go to Add Column, column from examples here, and from selection, right? So this means that we will basically generate a column out of this same selection, right? Okay, so if we do this, okay, again, I'll try to demonstrate this, right? We can just simply start writing the code, right? So I can go in here, write in date, and then start typing, right? And if I just double click, it will already give me some information. And I can just enter the end of the month, in this case, as my date, so that I get the date columns. And this would be a perfectly good explanation. Now, if I move down, you see Power BI will automatically fill this in, and in this way we can generate a date column. Now, because we already did this step, right, we basically insert the date column here, right, and we get the date column. So if we wanted to be really efficient, we could even remove this this original column to just keep the date column there. Now, the next thing that we need to do is we need to separate the dimensions out, right? So that we don't repeat those columns in text format, right? Because text is not as efficient if we just have ideas or integers. And this is really simple, right? So it's not hard. Basically, we reuse the same source table, okay? We reference it again, and then out of the profit centers, so we just select these two and remove other columns, okay? we select the profit center level 2, so our lowest or highest granularity in this hierarchy, and we say remove duplicates, right? So we right click, remove duplicates, and this makes a nice clean table that doesn't have repeated values. And the last thing that we need to do for this to become a proper dimension, so that we can then merge it back to the sales or fact table, is we need to add an index column, right? So we'll add an index column, we'll start from 1, and voila. You can also rename it and so on, but this gives us first a way to merge back these numbers instead of text into the main fact table, but also to then sort this by the numbers, right? So we can sort this column by our index. And this way we create the profit center like dimension. Okay, so I don't need this table because we already did this, right? So I'll just simply delete it. And we do the same for the region. Now, how do we actually bring this back so that we only keep the region ID and profit center ID as our columns in the fact, right? We select the two tables, right? So we take sales and region, okay? And we either go to the home tab, and here we can click merge queries, right? Now, this actually allows us to select both tables, right? So region and sales, and now I can basically select the region, but yeah, in this case we would have to have the text field still. So you select the text field in the sales and the region, the text field in the region, by which you actually merge that table, right? So you select these two, okay? Region and region in the sales fact table, and once you click OK, okay, this will now generate a column that's basically referencing that merged table. So we're merging on those values of the text. And all you need to do is then click on this icon to expand it to the region ID, right? To get the region ID, and we can just name it. So we remove this original column name as prefix. So we get to basically the profit center ID and region ID, and then we can remove the region and the profits center, both profit center columns out of it. So by simply we select one column, right click and remove other columns, and then we get to this interaction controls, and we simply remove the items that we don't need, right? We could even remove this column as well, but I'll just keep it for now. Okay, and in this way, we've actually built the two objects that we need to demonstrate. Now, in the end, you hit close and apply, and you will see now these tables directly available to you. And all you need to do then to ensure that now we have a proper star schema data model and that everything is connected, right? In the model view, you simply just drag and drop the region into the region ID, into the sales table, like this, right? We already have this connection, and do the same for the profit center. Okay, so now we've generated those two dimension tables by which we will filter, right? And we can again just hide the elements in the view mode, right? Here, so we just see, so we hide the sales fact table, and we hide all the unnecessary ID columns, right? So just to have the things that we need in the report, right? And this makes it much easier to then use in our reports when we'll be building all of the later objects. Now, we mentioned that we want to create a calendar table instead of just reusing the date field that is available in our single table, right? Because Power BI will actually generate an automatic calendar table out of each date field, right? So we want to prevent this, so we turn this off, and we actually generate our own calendar table. Now, I won't actually go into the entire code. We actually have an article that shows you how to reuse either a calendar table through DAX, right? So you basically can just enter a table either in here. So you just enter a new table and paste this DAX code, and it will reference your date field out of which it will, or all the possible dates, right? So from the first one to the last one, and out of those, it will generate a calendar table. Now, the rest of the columns generate the typical time periods that you need, and this is now the way how to use those in Power BI. Now, why is this important? Because if we create a proper calendar table, we can then leverage Power BI's time intelligence, right? For previous year, for periods, and so on later on. So once we have this, we have all the dimensions we need, and we simply just connect the date field back into the sales table, and we can now start building the reports, right? So we did the first thing, we cleaned and transformed our data. We implemented a proper star schema data model. Now is important for us to implement best practices of data visualization. Now, some of the things that we need to focus on are, of course, the layouts, the design, and how to actually visualize our data in the most efficient way, right? And we can leverage, of course, any sort of visualizations that we have in Power BI, so in the visualizations pane, but not all the visualizations will actually allow you to follow those design practices by default. So what we'll showcase now are 3 visuals, so Zebra BI cards, Zebra BI charts, and Zebra BI tables that handle all of these best practices of data visualizations or international business communication standards and implement them by default. So that means none of you needs to actually follow those and so on, because it will be hard for anyone to basically make it so that you don't follow those best practices.
And Mark, this is really this is the place where you actually make a difference for the end users. If you build a strong foundation, then this is now the place and time where it's not just for you, it's also for the end user, and this is how you will benefit him as well.
Exactly. And because we did all those steps, everything now will just fall into place, right? We don't need to write hard measures. We don't need to do all sorts of data modeling solutions with DAX, right? We are not solving our data modeling issues with DAX, but we just simply build some measures. It's like simple measures, okay? So you just add a new measure, you do a summarization on your sales column in the sales fact, and you do the same for previous year or costs and so on. It's just simple one line of code, not 40, not 50. And because we have also the calendar field, even if we didn't have the previous year, we could just simply create the previous year measure out of our existing measures. So we would say costs previous year equals to, we'll start with a calculate, right? And then we will simply reference our costs actual, right? And because we use the calendar, we can now reference the date field in the calendar to basically create a previous period or previous year out of that. So we simply do date add. We reference our date, so calendar date, right? Calendar date, move it 1 year backwards, right? So number of interval backwards, and we say year. So it's simple. And we can just hit enter, and Power BI will actually add the closing parentheses and so on. So this will be like just to demonstrate how you can also generate a simple measure out of existing data, even if it's not already in your data model, right? So when we have all the structures, we can really easily build them. But of course, the final part is the visualization itself. So when we start building our dashboards, we should think about the layout, the audience that will be watching, and we want to start with top level overview and then move into details. But yes, start like with the basics and then move onward. So for this, we'll start with Zebra BI cards with our top level KPIs, and we'll simply drop them into the canvas. Now, because we have those objects really easily available, we can just add our actual data, our previous data, and you see the visualization will be taken care of, right? So design, layout, insights, so automatic variances are generated out of this. Now, if we want to understand this on any of the dimensions that we created, like regions, we can just simply drop them into the group placeholder. And as you see, now if I expand, this will now give me a bigger area with which I can work with. And you can do a lot of transformations and so on, but this is not really that important. At the top level, you will find a layout changer, and we can switch to the uniform layout, right? So this allows us to basically resize all of these cards to something like this, okay? And it allows us to understand how we are doing on each of those regions. Now, one benefit of showing your KPIs or cards in this way, in a multi-card visual, is that you can leverage this later on to cross-filter the entire dashboard, right? Use the interactivity of Power BI to cross-filter, to select, and get deeper insights into each of those categories. But it also allows us to properly scale all of these metrics between each other, right? So we don't need to add a new slicer for each of those visions for our end users to then be able to walk through the data, but we can actually use the cards themselves. And because this is just a single Power BI object, it also has the added benefit of reduced impact on your performance, right? This is also one of the topics, but it's not the main thing we want to point out in this webinar. So I mentioned we want to scale all of these cards. So the second icon in each of those cards allows us to do just that. To properly scale all of the cards, we simply just click on all of them. And now when I'm done, I simply click OK, and now you see that those are now properly scaled between each other. Now, this is an often overlooked point when we're building dashboards and introducing visualizations, but it really allows us to keep our focus where the impact is happening, right? Okay, so now that we've dealt with the cards, we can do a proper structural breakdown, and for this we will use the Zebra BI tables. Now, the tables themselves can leverage the same objects, right? It's just a different type of visualization to create a different structural breakdown. So in this case, we will add our sales previous year, right? And you can see automatic variances generated out of it, right? So variance analysis is of course important. And then we add the profit center into the category. So this is the first level of the hierarchy. And now if we expand or collapse, we can see that it is all responsive. We can play around with the different views, right? So we can switch from just numbers and have like just variance analysis, right? So we can introduce different types of charts in the columns that we need, or we can visualize everything. So there's a lot of things, but just out of the box, Zebra BI will actually do this proper variance analysis for you. Now we can also introduce a hierarchy like this, right? So we'll drop another level and then we simply expand down, right? And now we have a bit of a more detailed report, but we see where we're doing well and not on sales. And as I said before, we can easily just cross-filter for all of the regions, right? To see wherever we're doing well or poorly, and we can easily just sort it by the worst or best performing units compared to previous year. But everything is nicely visualized, right? We keep our attention and we give information directly to our viewers. And the last part of it is, of course, we also need to showcase trends, right? And in this case, we can use the Zebra BI charts, right? We follow the same building blocks for actuals, for previous year, but in this case, we want to break them down either by month or quarter. And because we did the proper data modeling, right, we can now have everything nicely connected. If we want to make this a bit smaller, you see, we can make it so, but we also can still want to make use of visualization. So if this is not the chart type that it takes too much space, we can maybe switch it to this size dots. But still, we can now still see our performance nicely highlighted, and we can even sort by the relative or absolute variance like this, okay? So we now have enough space also for the charts, right? We can extend it maybe further in this case, and we can use any of the charts options, but again, the layout, the design elements, the interactivity, right? So even if we make this smaller, right, we can still click on the labels and just showcase everything, all the insights into your performance directly on the visualization itself, right? So we don't need to think about how to design, how to ensure proper formatting of each element. The visuals can take care of this by themselves. Now, what we wanted to actually build, of course, is this entire sales reports, right? So once you actually build your objects, you can also add additional insights, right? Commentary directly to the data fields. So we can even add annotations and storytelling features. And this is the next step, right? Once you actually visualize the data, gather the insights and present them through visualization, because this is actionable reporting, right? So the report itself should tell you where the actions should be needed or where you need to spend your attention.